Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Yonit Arthur. I'm an audiologist and coach. You are on the Steady Coach. Today, we're going to be talking about why you have not yet recovered from neural circuit dizziness and other symptoms using the tools that I talk about here on my channel or that you've heard about elsewhere. This video is based on a much longer conversation that I had with Sam Miller, in which, among other things, we outlined the 4 stages of neural circuit disorders from simplest, relatively easy to address, to most complex, hardest to address. In this video, I'm going to be simplifying that particular topic from that video. And in 2 upcoming videos, I'm going to take a deeper dive into what's actually in the stress bucket and how to address those things, as well as my take on how to use the tool of allowing most effectively for the purposes of recovery. So, my hope is that this video will simplify and make actionable many of the points we made about the 4 stages of neural circuit symptoms. There are 2 primary factors that determine what stage of neural circuit symptoms you fall into. Number one, how much stress is in your bucket, as well as what type of stress is in your bucket. And number two, your nervous system's relationship with safety, particularly in the form of connection to yourself and other people. So let's start first by talking about the stress bucket and kinds of stress that go in it. I use the stress bucket metaphor in many of my videos to describe the fact that you're affected by many different kinds of stress in your life, and that when you have lots of stress filling up your capacity or your bucket, eventually that stress reaches the top of the bucket, starting to overflow. And that's when your nervous system goes into threat mode and starts to respond to all sorts of things, including triggers, symptoms, and other stressors as though they're dangerous. This is when neural circuit symptoms begin. And this metaphor illustrates the idea that in order for you to stop having symptoms, we need to reduce the level of stress in your bucket. What we've never really talked about, and what I want to add on to that metaphor today, is that there are different kinds of stress in your stress bucket. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to divide them into 3 different categories: light, medium, and dense. Light stressors are just surface level stressors. These are typically time limited or situational stress, meaning that you can usually process these relatively easily and quickly. Examples of this would be things like work stress, getting married, moving to a new house, parenting overload, deadlines, and other life events, as long as they don't take on special meaning, which we're going to talk about for the other categories of stress. The impact of these kinds of light stressors is that they fill up the bucket temporarily, you clear them out, and the stress level comes down enough that the bucket isn't overflowing anymore. Now, medium stress, I think of as stress fuel. These are the kinds of stressors that make other stressors burn hotter. So, not only are they their own source of stress, they make other stress more stressful. Typically, these are long standing or chronic patterns or habits that make you respond to stress in a way that makes stress bigger. For example, those of you who are big perfectionists or very conscientious tend to put a lot of pressure on yourselves when faced with any kind of external stress. Those of you who have the habit of suppressing emotions may not have access to the data that you need to make good decisions about your needs and may end up harboring resentment and other feelings toward people in your lives. So, the impact that these stress fuel or medium stressors have is that when outside stress comes in, say light stressors, those stressors fill up the bucket, and this stress fuel makes those stressors bigger. What this does is cause your bucket to fill up more easily, more often, or maybe even be at capacity all the time. So, any amount of light stress is liable to tip your bucket over into overload and cause symptoms. Finally, dense stress. I think of this as a pressure cooker. There's tightly packed in material that is very threatening, and it's both leaking stress on its own and making the other two types of stress bigger as well. Examples of this kind of stress are the effects of trauma, identity level shame, and core beliefs like I'm not worthy, I'm never safe, no one loves me, I'm always alone. Because these core beliefs have an effect on how you do everything else in your life, this pressure cooker type of stress fills up the bucket even without any input from outside stress. In other words, this kind of stress fills the bucket from inside out, and the bucket becomes its own source of stress. Tools typically backfire with this kind of stress, as we're going to talk about. Okay, so now that we've talked about the types of stress that can be in your stress bucket, let's talk about the stages of neural circuit syndrome, from least severe, stage 1, to most severe, stage 4. And I want to emphasize clearly that this does not necessarily relate to the severity of symptoms. I've seen people in stage 1 have very severe symptoms, and people in stage 3 have less severe symptoms. It relates more to how your nervous system relates to safety and the kinds of tools that you're going to need to recover from your symptoms. Stage 1. The bucket contents are mostly light stress, meaning situational, normal life stressors. These occasionally tip the bucket into being full. Your nervous system is still flexible, it's still responsive. Symptoms come and go, most likely with stress, and tools work well at this stage. The symptoms themselves may look like headaches that come and go, flare ups of unexplained symptoms of other kinds, fatigue that comes and goes, occasional stomach problems. And because of the nervous system's flexibility at this stage, you still have a pretty good relationship with safety and are able to take in safety. This means your system can take in tools, reassurance, education. Most of what you need here is simply good, clear explanations, orientation, and direction. And the practice at this point can be entirely self led. The metaphor that best matches this stage is you're on a day hike and your feet are starting to hurt, your backpack is getting kind of heavy, and you may not even realize that there's something that could be done to make yourself more comfortable. But if someone lightens your pack a little bit, points you to a slightly easier trail, you're going to feel a lot better. So, what you need here really is just a tour guide like my channel. And soon, when you have all the information, you can become your own tour guide. So, when you see the YouTube comments from people who found my channel and got better within weeks, typically, not always, they were in stage 1. They just needed the information. Stage 2. At this point, the bucket contains surface level stressors and some of those medium stressors or stress fuel that I was talking about earlier. This means the bucket starts to overflow more often, or it's always on the edge of overflowing, or it may even be at the point of overflowing constantly. So, your nervous system responses here are still linked to stress because there's still a lot of outside stress that's affecting you, but some of the stress is self generating. It's from that stress fuel, from those medium stressors. This means the stress bucket is starting to react to itself. For example, fear of symptoms can make the stress from symptoms much worse. Being conscientious and having a lot of guilt can make the stress from not being able to perform a lot worse. And because some of the stress now comes from within the bucket, you may not see as easily the relationship between outside stress and flares of symptoms, although that relationship may still be clearer in stage 2 than in later stages. Symptoms here start to look like migraines, dizziness, pain, anxiety, and many of these symptoms will again be reactive to stress. But some of you, even in stage 2, will have 24/7 symptoms because dizziness produces its own physiologic anxiety response, itself a form of stress. Now, your system's relationship to safety, at this point, you can still take in education, you can still use tools, but your system is more reactive. Reassurance and information alone don't cut it here. You're going to actually need to apply tools to do something to weather some of these ups and downs and reactivity that you're having. So here you're on unfamiliar terrain, your map is smudged, your GPS is broken, and you feel lost. Your panic is starting to rise as you try various tools, but you're still walking. You're typically reaching out for help from other people or from other tools. At this stage, what you need is a pathfinder, someone who can give you a little bit more structured guidance and help you learn how to apply the tools. The pathfinder's expertise helps steady you and reduce the panic. You can start to become your own pathfinder by shifting from fixing to noticing, using tools like somatic tracking and emotional awareness and expression, learning to quality control your thoughts by knowing what to do with doubts and how to not get caught in fear stories, and practicing general self compassion. Many forms of standard therapy for neuroplastic conditions or neural circuit conditions, such as pain reprocessing therapy or PRT, or emotional awareness and expression therapy or EAET, are very effective here. That's because slight missteps or slight misses in communication between you and your therapist or the techniques you're using are tolerable by your system. They're good enough. Your system is still stable enough to be able to handle something that doesn't quite land just right. Now, stage 3 is when we start to have proportionally more pressure cooker type material in the bucket versus the previous two. While everyone has probably a little bit of all three types of stress in their bucket, stage 3 is where we see more pressure cooker versus medium or light stressors. This pressure cooker material is leaking stress. And what that means is the stress bucket becomes self sustaining. That means it fills itself even without input from you and without input from outside stressors. This is why symptoms start to persist without any clear triggers. And because your system is more reactive, attempts to empty your bucket or pressure your bucket into emptying can actually fill it more and backfire. At this point, we're looking at persistent symptoms, possibly severe pain, dizziness, POTS, chronic fatigue, chronic migraines, broad intolerances, etc. And here, your relationship to safety is more unstable. You're in a loop because your system is generating stress from the inside. So it's hard to trust any signals of safety at all. You tend to have a frantic inner focus and preoccupation with yourself and your symptoms, but there's still some outward orientation, meaning you can still reach out and are attempting to reach out, but you can only sometimes receive what comes back and only if it's a particularly sharp signal. This means that communication really needs to closely mirror and attune to your experiences, or the signal is too fuzzy or too far off from what your system needs, and it'll be rejected. And this is why your system can't use tools or education effectively anymore. You're off trail, you're in thick woods, you don't have a map, you're lost, your system is looping, trust and safety are getting harder to feel, you're clinging to survival strategies, you're sometimes still calling for help, but you're not sure you can hear others when they respond to you. You need someone who's going to be able to mirror you and map the terrain while accompanying you. In other words, you need a map maker and a Sherpa, someone who can help you see your patterns without judgment and also carry the burden while helping you navigate. Many therapists and counselors cannot do this, and many standard forms of therapy for neural circuit conditions do not have this level of attunement and guidance built into them. This is where you need a practitioner with a high level of skill and attunement who is not going to try to put your experiences into boxes. Skilled practitioners of memory reconsolidation type techniques can help map your world for you. I have an entire video on memory reconsolidation techniques that you should definitely check out if you haven't seen it. It's an interview with Tori Olds, and I'll make sure to put that in the video description. Most people here on my channel are likely in stages 1 and 2. But those of you who've been here long term and are still stuck are likely stuck because you're in stage 3. Now, a primary tool to start to use here is allowing, which Sam Miller and I talked about a lot in our conversation, also linked in the video description, by the way. And this will be the topic of a future video from me as well. But I think an important component of this is the map making. In other words, you have to be able to make sense of some of your patterns. And when you do this, it'll teach you how to access safety in the ways that you need to access safety. And it'll teach you how to allow more effectively as well. Now, stage 4. The vast majority of you watching this channel are not in stage 4, but it's worth understanding because there are some insights here that may be useful for your recovery. The bucket content here is densely packed in. It's primarily the pressure cooker. It is entirely self-filling or self-generating, which means that any activation from the outside, even tools that are effective for healing other people, become a source of pressure and threat. There is a total loss of trust in internal and external safety and collapse. Overload is the baseline here. Symptoms are extreme, and most people are debilitated. Because your system is so sensitive here, any pressure, including safety signals, is likely to be interpreted by the system as threatening and cause further collapse. Here, you're lost in the woods, no tools, no map, no hope, curled up on the ground, no longer reaching out for help. And here, the type of help that will actually assist you is a cartographer, someone who can see and help you see your own patterns with precision and without pressure. A cartographer knows how to start to expand the map slowly based on what your nervous system tolerates and how to coax your nervous system out of a completely frozen state using somatic or memory reconsolidation based tools. And here, again, you need an advanced practitioner with a very high level of skill to do this. You can begin to become your own cartographer and coax your nervous system out of the frozen state by allowing, but this will not necessarily give you the clarity on your maps that you need in order to get yourself out of this. So again, most of you watching this video are likely in stages 1 and 2. Some of you may be in high stage 2 entering stage 3, and some of you may be in stage 3. Very few of you are in stage 4. But my hope is that by simplifying the conversation that I had with Sam, this has given you some clarity on where you're at and exactly why some of the tools you may be trying aren't helping you get out of the situation you're in. The wrong type of help can make you feel worse than no help at all, especially when you're in the later stages. If you found this interesting, I encourage you to listen to the full conversation with Sam and also to stay tuned for the at least 2 upcoming videos that I have to follow up on this one, on the stress bucket and also on my particular take on allowing and how to do it. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'd love to hear your questions and comments, so be sure to drop them below. If you could also like, share, subscribe to my channel. These things truly help me reach more people. Very important to me. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk soon.